now unmuted. So like you said, my name is Rachel Carden. I am a web developer at the University of Alabama, where WordPress is our official CMS, and we are all about some WordPress. But mostly, I'm involved in a lot of communities. I lead 2 different meetups that meet every month, and I'm also currently organizing a conference. And so community is very important to me, and it's not just about, the work that comes out of it, but it's also the people that are a part of these communities. They're important to me, and obviously the work would not be done without them. And so just as professional development is important to pretty much everyone, personal development is very important to me, and making sure that, you're in the right mindset to make your work, because that can have a huge impact on, not only, what you make, but the quality. And also, bottom line, people are important. Just as important, if not more important, obviously, than the code and the projects that we make. So, obviously, a big part of our world is sharing what we do and sharing our code and our projects. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how awesome, sharing code is. Probably the majority of people in this room probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for publicly available code. Myself included, I taught myself. There wasn't a program. There probably wasn't really programs when most of us were, getting started. And so we took to the web. We took to the internet to find this education. We looked at other people's code to use as examples and to help us get better. And so publicly available code is very important. But unfortunately, sharing your code and sharing what you do can be a little scary. It can be intimidating. You're putting yourself out there. You're opening yourself up to criticism. You're putting yourself out there that someone could look at it and, say, what in the world was she doing? And that in itself, can hold a lot of people back from sharing, what they do. But sharing your work means playing an active role in improving your community, and that's important to a lot of people, myself included. We want to keep our world moving, and we want to make it better, and we want to therefore encourage the people that are part of our world and part of our community to share what they do and to open themselves up to us. So kind of reiterate, why are we afraid to share? Kind of at the basic core, everyone's a little bit afraid. We think our code isn't good enough. We don't want people to criticize what we do. Thankfully for, probably most people, you're nervous and you make it, when you're about to hit that publish button, you go and you probably recheck your code about 20 times over, but eventually you hit send and you put your code out there. And you let go of that fear. But sadly, this isn't the case for everyone. There are a lot of developers experience a real level of anxiety and actual anxiety disorders that hold them back from sharing, and that have this kind of power over what they do and what they put out there. And so it's kind of the gist of what I wanted to talk about today. And also both sides of that coin, how we as developers can kind of get over these fears and these anxieties and at least work on them. And then how people on the other side of the coin, can have empathy towards these people and contribute to a positive cycle of sharing and feedback. And so that way it encourages everyone to not only share, but to, contribute to the community and contribute to our world. Otherwise, if we don't have this publicly available code and this sharing, then we're not going to grow and we're not going to change. We're not going to adapt and move forward. So at the base kind of level, this is, some kind of phobias. We're all, that fear of imperfection, of not being good enough. That's kind of like a base anxiety disorder that people deal with. I'm not really going to touch on this too much. I just kind of wanted to throw it out there that, lots of people, and some people today have discussed it already, this fear of this unattainable perfection that we have and how it can hold us back in our code and our development. But there are, but it gets kind of grows beyond that. And also another topic that several people have brought up today, which is great, is imposter syndrome. It is a real thing. I don't know, I'm obviously not going to ask people here to raise their hands, but a lot of us, deal with this, or at least we know someone. If you want to raise your hand, if you deal with imposter syndrome, embrace it, or someone who deals with this. I think we probably all deal with it in a little ways. I mean, maybe not as much as others. I have someone very important in my life who has very serious imposter syndrome, and I can see how the effect that it has on this person's life and their work. And it's tough. You have these feelings of self-doubt. Basically, you always kind of feel like you're at the bottom, that everyone's better than you. Who cares what you say, because they know better. What value do you bring to the table? These are all real thoughts. And, most of them are unfounded, if not all of them. But that doesn't mean that these people, that have imposter syndrome aren't feeling them very deeply, and that it's not having a huge effect on, what they do on a day-to-day. I guess part of the imposter, you feel like you're a fraud. You feel like you don't deserve the successes and the accomplishments that you do. It's rough. I love this tweet by David. For many devs, these are bigger problems to overcome than just code issues. Some of us, we go to share our code, or we just kind of dealing with simple, maybe not so simple code issues. But for many of us, there's always this fear, this anxiety, this thing in our minds we can't get out of our minds that control, what we do with our code. And so it goes from these simple, basic, we think our code's not good enough, to I'm not good enough. Everyone else knows more than me. No one cares what I have to say, so why put it out there? This is a great kind of graphic that kind of shows, imposter syndrome versus reality. The blue, what I know, and I think everybody knows more than me. But in reality, we all know different things. We all have different insight and different perspective. We're all in different levels. There's always someone in front of you that knows more than you. There's always someone, not necessarily behind you, but someone who knows less than you. This is the reality. But for someone dealing with imposter syndrome, this is not their reality. So I wanted to kind of walk through a few kind of steps to help, like I said earlier, both sides of the coin, kind of help those dealing with imposter syndrome to kind of get over, or at least a way to help them get over these fears and anxieties. But also for those of us on the other side who are, maybe we're probably all working with someone dealing with this. How can we as developers help them help everyone? So first up, be honest. Oop, it's not sweet. There we go. Be honest. Be honest with yourself, and stand up for yourself against yourself. Pretty much. One of the worst things for people dealing with imposter syndrome is that they cannot get out of their heads. They're living there, and they don't. Even if they tell themselves that they know what they're talking about, they don't believe it. But mostly embrace these anxieties and these fears, and don't let them control you. Call yourself out. When you're having these self-deteriorating thoughts, stand up to yourself and call yourself out and say no. I know someone who had to do the rubber band thing. Every time that they had a thought, that was, self-deprecating, they had snapped that rubber band. That might be something that you try. Be honest and accept your value, and accept that the roles that you play and the successes. If you had a successful project, you did that. You had that role in that, and it wasn't just luck. You put in the hard work. You are valuable and you are unique, and we all have individual, insight and experience and know-how, and the way we look at things and the way we think about things. We all can bring these different things to the table, and so, stand up for that and be proud of what you do. So here's another great tweet. Be honest with yourself about what you know and have accomplished, and focus less on the difference. I heard Chris share this in a video. The way you think about the way you think impacts the way you think, and that's so true. You are your greatest enemy. When you get in your head and you're having these thoughts, you're probably the only one thinking these things. No one else is, And so the more that you can be honest with yourself and encourage yourself, the better you are. Next, have the right perspective. And this kind of goes back to what several people have shared today. There is no win in comparing yourself with others. We all have, different things. And like I said earlier, we all have unique insight and value. But the reason that we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. That's so true. I saw someone tweet that, and I found, the author, and I loved that because it's so true. You get on Twitter and you get on Facebook and you see all these people posting, their highlight reel, their big moments, their great things. And because of course you're gonna, especially, of course you're gonna post that on social media. You're not gonna, not everybody gets on social media and posts about the crappy things that happen. So you're sitting there comparing your day-to-day with people that are, the highlights. And so social media can be bad, can be wonderful, but it can also be pretty bad. But as far as perspective goes, focus on the value that you bring to the table. Something that I've always loved going to conferences, and when I first kind of got involved, I never really submitted to speak because I had the same problem. What do I have to bring? Surely everyone there, they already know what I know. And, what am I doing that's any different? And then over time, the more I heard these people, sharing, the more I realized, what? Someone might be interested. I look at things differently than you do. I work in a different, we all, use WordPress, but we all use it in different environments. I work in the world of higher education, and so I use WordPress in that field, and so therefore I build different sites than you do, and I use WordPress differently than you do. I look at WordPress differently than you do. And so I have a different train of thought than you do, just as you do. To me, most of the stuff I get out of conferences is I don't necessarily, need to go and hear a very specific, tool. What I love to go and hear is your brains. I love to pick the brains of other people, and I love to hear how you look at things and how you think about things, because we're all so different. We all have something to bring to the table. Just like the web, we are all constantly changing and learning and adapting and growing, and our perspectives are always changing. Be open to and give constructive criticism. This goes on both sides of the coin, and this is something that holds a lot of people back from sharing their projects. They're so afraid of what people will say. They're so afraid that someone will pull up their code and look at, line 10 and call them out because, something that they didn't include, or, something like that. How often do we pull up, someone else's project that maybe we took on and immediately criticize how, oh my gosh, this code is so horrible. And we have all done it. I've done it, and I try to break myself of this because I don't know what that person was doing. I don't know how old this code is some of the times. Oh my gosh, I cringe if I think about someone looking at a code I wrote a year or two ago and what they would say. And so, but I'm doing the same thing. I'm pulling up this code somebody else wrote probably a year or two ago, and I'm criticizing them, and I know nothing about the situation. But more so than that, it's just not encouraging. We have this. We are in charge of our attitudes, and we are, we can control the positivity, and we can keep negativity out of the feedback cycle. If you don't have anything to say that's constructive, then don't say anything at all. If you're not going to help the situation, then what's the point? You see people that it kind of goes around to like the golden rule, treat other developers as you would want to be treated. If you stuck something out there, would you want someone to say those things to you when they don't know what's going on? And so that alone kind of drives, that alone I think would kind of help in a lot of scenarios. Just kind of think about how, if that was your code, how you would want others to, give feedback. I am not against feedback. Constructive feedback is amazing because, like I've been saying, we all have these different ways of thinking, and I may not have thought of that, but, I'm super glad you shared it with me because that's going to help my project immensely. What's not going to help me is, someone jumping, on Twitter or on a forum and, screaming at me because for some reason something's broken or there's some feature that it doesn't have that they want, and when the best thing would have been to add the feature, work on the feature yourself, or offer constructive suggestions to help things move along. I loved this tweet. There are thousands of programmers who need help and better tooling, but what they don't need is snark, superior attitudes, or your approval. And that's so true. There are so many ways that we can be constructive and we can be encouraging, and above all, we can be good people and be helpful to those who are probably, especially to those who are like in our shoes that we were in 5 years ago. Like I said earlier, we all are kind of children of learning off the internet and publicly available code. And we were all at this point. We all were at the point where we wrote, pseudo crappy code. We all write crappy code. And in the reality, all code becomes bad code. And so, sorry. I'm sorry, that was so bad. Just being a good encourager and being a good motivator and being good. When it comes down to it, just, being a good person. No one has ever made himself great by showing how small someone else is. And I just kind of have a couple of these. I guess I obviously love quotes. But most of this kind of section of what I'm talking about is just having to do with treat others as you would want to be treated. You learn a lot, sometimes you learn a lot by seeing, I guess, what the difficult people do, and that kind of helps you see what you don't want to do. But ultimately, you control your attitude and you control your happiness. And so no one can make you feel inferior without your consent, and that's a great quote. You can't stop someone from judging you, but you can stop or you can control how it affects you. And so put yourself out there and don't necessarily, worry, of what might happen because you have control over that. And if someone is rude with you and gives, negative feedback, don't jump on the rude cycle and, don't jump on the negative cycle. That's not helping. That's not helping at all. Kill them with kindness is what I would say. And, if they keep on being rude, then, bye-bye. You don't need that in your life. You don't need that negative. But also how you make others feel about themselves, it says a lot about you. I love this one too. Being mean is not a best practice. Also, though, don't take yourself too seriously. Make mistakes. Put yourself out there. Try new things. Most of us have, no idea what we're doing half the time, but we're trying things and we're trying new things, and we're, don't worry about, mistakes, things like that. Put yourself out there. Mistakes are a process of learning, and there's no improvement if you don't, recognize these mistakes and implement them. How else would we grow? How else would we, move up? And how else would we grow as developers and as people? So don't take yourself too seriously. And I kind of alerted to that one earlier. You will never be able to stop people from judging you, but you can stop it from affecting you. So don't take yourself too seriously. Don't get too upset. And keep on keeping on. But ultimately, what it comes down to is that you are not your code. I find it great that I'm quoting Kanye West, but I loved this. No, you're not perfect, but you're not your mistakes. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. I mean, it all kind of comes back to that basic thing. How would we grow, and how would we change, and how would we adapt if we didn't take these lessons and we didn't try these things and we didn't mess up? There's nothing wrong with messing up. And, just embrace the messing up. Embrace the mistakes. Embrace these little things. Be open to constructive input. Be open to change. We're constantly changing, not just as people, but as developers. Our world is constantly changing. The web is constantly changing. WordPress is constantly changing. And so, the more that we just recognize that and, use it to our advantage, then the more that we're going to grow as people and as developers. So failure is simply an opportunity to begin again, but this time more intelligently. Take those lessons that you've learned from these mistakes and use them for good. Don't let them drag you down. That's not helping anyone. It's not helping you, and it's not helping the people you work with, and it's not helping your community. But what will help is taking these lessons you've learned and sharing them with your peers, and then applying them to yourself and to your work. And then last but not least, surround yourself with ideas, encouragement, and awesome. If you surround yourself with negativity, then you're probably going to be a negative person. So get rid of that. Surround yourself with people that inspire you and that motivate you and that encourage you. And then in turn, be that person who supports and motivates and inspires and encourages others. Build people up. That is, tearing people down, no one wins with that. But building people up, that builds WordPress. That builds our community of people. Without the people that build WordPress, we wouldn't have WordPress. And so encourage people and build them up. Pat them on the back. Tell them good job. Sometimes telling someone great job takes, 2 seconds out of your day, but that might mean the world to them. Good people bring out the good in people. So be a good person. This kind of goes without saying. We all do better when we all do better. I mean, if we're all, adding to this cycle of positivity and inspiration and motivation and movement, then we all get to move up. I believe in good people. So now go share your code and embrace your awesomeness. Thank you.